Think about the last time you really needed to fall asleep. Maybe it was the night before something important. You had to be sharp. You had to rest. You told yourself you needed to sleep. And the more you told yourself, the more awake you became. The harder you tried to sleep, the further sleep moved from you. You watched the minutes pass. You calculated how many hours remained. You tried different positions, different breathing, different thoughts. You forced it, and forcing it made it impossible. This is not a sleep problem. It is a demonstration of one of the most consistent laws in human experience. The harder you try to force certain things, the further they move from you. Sleep, confidence, focus, creativity, the feeling of being at ease in a difficult situation, the state of flow where everything becomes effortless and clear. These things cannot be directly pursued. They arrive as consequences of other things, and the moment you make them the direct object of effort, they disappear. Miyamoto Musashi built his entire philosophy on this understanding, not as theory, as a survival principle. In a duel, the warrior who forces the outcome telegraphs his intention and gives his opponent the opening. The warrior who is not forcing anything is impossible to read. His movement comes from what is actually there, rather than from what he has decided should happen. Musashi called this Mizu no Kokoro, the water mind. Not passive, not weak. The specific quality of a mind that responds to what is actually present, rather than trying to impose what it has already decided. 4 moments from his life, 3 practices to build this quality in yours. Subscribe, and let's begin. Chapter 1. The Sculpture He Stopped Halfway. Kyoto, 1634. Musashi is 50 years old. He has not fought a formal duel in years. He is working on a wooden sculpture, a seated figure, simple in concept. He has been working on it for 4 days. A student watching him notices something strange on the afternoon of the 4th day. Musashi stops, mid-stroke. The chisel is still in his hand. He looks at the wood for a long moment, then he sets the chisel down and steps back from the work. He does not return to it that day. The student approaches carefully. "Master, is something wrong with the piece?" Musashi looks at it without answering immediately. "There is too much intention in it," he says finally. The student looks at the sculpture. It appears to him skillful and precise, exactly what a master's work should look like. "It looks correct," the student says. "Yes," Musashi says. "That is the problem." He walks away from the workshop. The student stands there looking at the sculpture, trying to understand what he is missing. The work is technically accomplished. The proportions are right. The surface is clean. What could possibly be wrong with it being correct? 3 days later, Musashi returns to the workshop. He does not pick up the chisel immediately. He sits near the sculpture and looks at it for 20 minutes. Then he picks up the chisel and makes 4 strokes. Something changes in the piece. The student cannot say precisely what. The sculpture has the same proportions it had before, the same surface, but it is different. It was a correct piece of work before. Now it is alive. "What did you do?" the student asks. "Nothing," Musashi says. "I waited until I could do nothing, and then I did it." The student does not understand. Musashi sits. "When I came back to the wood the first time, I knew what the sculpture should be. I could see it very clearly, and that clarity was the problem. My hands were trying to produce the image in my mind, rather than discovering what was in the wood." He looks at the piece. "The wood already contains something. My intention was covering it. The more clearly I knew what I wanted, the more I was covering what was there." He pauses. 3 days of not touching it, long enough for the intention to quiet. When I returned, I could feel the wood again, not what I wanted from it, what it was, and the 4 strokes came from that. This is the law of reversed effort in its purest form. Not in combat, not in strategy, in the simple act of making something. The forced intention, however skilled and however clear, produces a technically correct object. The released intention, the hand that is present with what is actually there rather than imposing what has been decided, produces something alive. Musashi had been making things for 40 years. He knew the difference by feel, when his hands were serving his intention and when they were serving the material. And he had learned that the first always produced less than the second. The 3 days of not touching the sculpture was not procrastination. It was the specific practice of releasing the intention far enough that the hands could feel the material again. You have experienced this, the solution to a problem that arrived the moment you stopped trying to find it. The right words for a difficult conversation that came when you stopped rehearsing them. The creative idea that appeared in the shower rather than at the desk. This is not coincidence. It is the law of reversed effort in daily operation. The thing you were forcing moved away from the force. The moment you stopped forcing, it arrived. Musashi understood this not as an occasional happy accident but as a consistent law, and he deliberately worked with it rather than against it. Chapter 2. The painting he could not force. Kyoto, 1615. There is a painting Musashi cannot finish. He has been working on it for 3 days. A simple composition, a small bird on a dead branch. The technique is there, the brushwork is controlled and precise, but something is missing. The painting is correct but not alive. He knows the difference. He has seen alive paintings. He has made some himself. This is not one. He tries harder. He adjusts the composition. He refines the brushwork. He adds more deliberate intention to each stroke. The painting gets worse. On the 4th day, he puts down the brush and does not approach the painting at all. He eats, he walks, he sleeps. He does not think about the painting. On the 5th day, he picks up the brush and without thinking about what he is doing, makes 3 strokes. The painting becomes alive. He does not know precisely what changed. He knows that the 3 days of forcing had been producing a performance of a painting rather than the thing itself. And the day of not trying had allowed something to release that the forcing had been blocking. A student who witnesses this asks him what happened. The painting was in the brush, Musashi says. I kept getting in the way. This is the law of reversed effort applied to creativity. The trying had been the obstacle, not because effort is wrong in general, because the specific kind of effort, the forcing of a predetermined outcome, had blocked the very quality the painting required. The water mind does not try to make the river go a certain direction. It moves with what is actually there and finds the path of least resistance to where it needs to go. Musashi's forced brushstrokes were trying to make the painting go a specific direction. When he stopped trying, the painting found its own direction. This happens with more than paintings. Every time you try to force a conversation to go a certain way, you make it go a different way. Every time you try to force confidence to appear, it hides. Every time you try to force focus, the mind rebels. The thing you are forcing can feel your force, and it responds to force by moving away. Chapter 3. The lesson he refused to give. Edo, 1630. A young warrior has been studying under Musashi for 6 months. He is talented, motivated. He practices twice what the other students practice. He tries harder than anyone. He is also the student making the least progress. Musashi watches him for weeks without saying anything. The student practices with visible intensity. His face shows the effort. His body is tense with the desire to improve. Every repetition is an attempt to force better performance out of himself. He watches himself performing. He evaluates each attempt. He corrects himself constantly. He is trying to become good so hard that he cannot be good. One afternoon, Musashi calls him aside. "You are trying to become good," he says. The student nods. "Of course, that is why he is here." "Stop." The student does not understand. "You practice to become good," Musashi says. "But you are not practicing the thing. You are practicing the trying to become good. These are completely different activities, and they produce completely different results." He demonstrates his own movement through the same form. No visible effort, no tension, no performance of trying. The body moving as though the form is simply passing through it rather than being executed by it. When I do this, I am not thinking about doing it well. I am doing it. The difference is that thinking about doing it well fills the mind with the idea of doing it well, and the idea gets in the way of the doing. The student asks the question every student in this situation asks, "How do I stop trying?" Musashi is quiet for a moment. "You cannot decide to stop trying. That is just more trying. It is trying to stop trying. You can only practice doing the thing itself as completely and as honestly as possible and allow the trying to fall away on its own when it finds nothing to grip." He looks at the student directly. "The harder you try to become good, the more the trying blocks the becoming. This is the paradox you have to live with until you understand it, not from my words but from your own experience. The student practices differently after this conversation, not better immediately, but differently. He is less focused on monitoring his own performance. He is more present with the doing itself. 6 weeks later, in the middle of a practice session, something shifts. He stops monitoring for a moment, and in that moment the form moves through him rather than being executed by him. It lasts perhaps 3 seconds, then the monitoring returns and the quality disappears. But he has felt it now. He knows what Musashi was describing, and he knows that no amount of trying could have produced it, only the stopping of trying. This is the most counterintuitive aspect of the law of reversed effort. The solution to over-trying is not willpower applied to stopping trying. That is just more trying. The solution is the gradual, patient practice of doing without monitoring, until the trying exhausts itself and what remains is the doing. Modern psychology calls this the ironic process theory. The research is consistent. The harder you try to suppress a thought, the more prominent the thought becomes. The harder you try to control anxiety, the stronger it gets. The harder you try to perform well while monitoring your own performance, the worse the performance. Musashi knew this not as theory, but as the central practical obstacle standing between every student and genuine mastery, and he had no shortcut for it. Only the patient practice of doing without forcing until forcing falls away on its own. Chapter 4. Mizu no Kokoro, the Water Mind. Mount Iwato, 1645. Musashi is writing the Book of 5 Rings in the months before his death. He is trying to describe something that resists direct description, the quality of mind that made everything possible, the state from which all his victories, artistic and martial, had emerged. He writes, "The mind should be like water." Then he sits with that for a long time. Water does not try to flow downhill. It flows downhill because downhill is where it goes when nothing is blocking it. The trying would be the block. Water without blocks finds the path naturally. He writes more. Water takes the shape of whatever contains it. Pour it into a square vessel, it becomes square. Pour it into a round vessel, it becomes round. It does not resist the shape. It does not insist on a different shape. It completely inhabits whatever is actually there. He writes, "In combat, the mind should meet whatever is there and respond to it completely, not to the combat you expected, not to the opponent you prepared for. The opponent who is actually there, in this moment, doing what he is actually doing. The water mind is not passive. Water can cut stone given enough time. Water moves ships across oceans. Water is one of the most powerful forces in nature, but it does not force, it flows. And in flowing, it accomplishes what direct force could never accomplish." This is what Musashi had built across 61 duels and decades of artistic practice. Not a more powerful force, a less blocked flow. He sets down his brush. The Book of 5 Rings is almost finished. He has 2 months to live. He has spent 60 years learning to get out of his own way. That is what he is leaving behind. Not techniques, not strategies. The understanding that the most capable state is not the most effortful one. It is the one where effort is present when needed and absent when it blocks. The water mind. Musashi won 61 duels, not by trying harder than everyone else, but by understanding when trying was the obstacle. If this is changing how you see your own effort, like this video, one tap. Now we continue with the 3 practices. The 3 practices of Mizu no Kokoro. Musashi did not write a how-to guide for the water mind, but across the Book of 5 Rings and the accounts of those who trained with him, 3 practices emerge that build the specific quality he was describing. Practice 1. The non-monitoring practice. Every time you monitor your own performance while performing, you split the mind between the doing and the watching of the doing. The watching degrades the doing. This is why you trip when you think about how you are walking, why you forget words when you are too aware of how you are speaking, why the skill you can execute perfectly in practice becomes unreliable when you are watching yourself execute it. The practice is simple and uncomfortable. Choose one skill you are developing. For 1 practice session per week, do it without monitoring, without evaluating, without asking whether it is going well. Just do it, not perform it, not try to do it well. Do it. When the monitoring voice arrives, which it will, do not engage with it, do not argue with it, do not try to silence it. Just return to the doing. The monitoring will not disappear immediately. Over weeks, it becomes quieter. The practice shifts from performing while watched to simply doing. This is the beginning of the water mind. The mind present with the activity rather than present with an evaluation of the activity. Practice 2. The release before the important thing. Before anything important, most people try harder. They add more mental effort to an already effortful situation. They review, rehearse, tighten, force. Musashi did the opposite. Before the duel at Ganryujima, he carved wood. Before important paintings, he sometimes did nothing. Before significant conversations, he walked. Not because preparation is wrong, because a specific kind of mental releasing before the important thing allows the preparation that has already been done to be available rather than blocked by the trying. The practice. In the 30 minutes before any important activity, do something completely unrelated that requires mild physical engagement and no mental forcing. Walk, wash dishes, work with your hands, something concrete and simple. Not reviewing what you are about to do, not rehearsing, not preparing further. Just doing something simple that brings the mind to the present moment before requiring it to perform. After this 30-minute release, enter the important activity. The quality of presence available after a genuine release is different from the quality available after 30 more minutes of forcing. The preparation you have already done is more accessible. The mind is more responsive to what is actually there rather than to what it has been rehearsing. Musashi's late arrival at Ganryujima was this practice, taken to an extreme. 2 hours of release while his opponent spent 2 hours forcing. The result was not close. Practice 3. The obstacle reframe. When something is not working, the default response is more effort, more force, more trying. Musashi's response was different. When something was not working, he treated the not working as information rather than as a problem to be overcome through force. The practice. When you encounter persistent resistance in any area of your life, ask one question before adding more effort. What am I forcing that does not want to be forced? Not as a reason to give up, as a diagnostic question. Sometimes the resistance is telling you something important about the direction rather than the intensity of your effort. Musashi's painting that would not come alive was not resistant to effort. It was resistant to a specific kind of effort. The moment he changed the quality of the engagement rather than the quantity, it responded. Write down one area where you are currently experiencing persistent resistance despite increased effort. Ask the question honestly. What am I forcing here? Sometimes the answer is nothing. The resistance is ordinary difficulty and more effort is the right response. But sometimes the answer reveals something different, a direction that is slightly wrong, a quality of engagement that is blocking rather than enabling, a trying that has become the obstacle. When you find it, do not immediately know what to do instead. Sit with the question. The water mind finds its own path when the forcing stops blocking it. What this means for you. The law of reversed effort is not a permission to stop trying. Musashi trained harder than almost anyone in his era. He practiced obsessively. He refined his technique across decades. He was not passive or indifferent to the outcome. What he understood was the difference between two kinds of effort, and this distinction is everything. The first kind is effort in alignment with what the situation actually requires, present with what is there, responsive to what is actually happening rather than to what has been planned. This kind of effort produces. The second kind is effort directed at forcing a predetermined outcome, regardless of what is actually there. The mind insisting on a specific result, the will imposing rather than responding. This kind of effort blocks. Most people who struggle are not struggling because they lack effort. They are applying the first kind of effort where the second kind is needed, and the second where the first is needed. Think about the areas of your life where you are trying very hard and getting very little. The relationship where you are working so hard at it that the other person feels the work and pulls back. The creative project where the more you force it, the less alive it becomes. The performance that is worse under pressure despite more preparation. The sleep that recedes the harder you pursue it. These are not areas